It has an area of more than 30 million square kilometers, surpassed only by Asia. It holds varied and significant amounts of the world's natural resources, making it a center of attraction for world powers. At the ongoing UN General Assembly in New York, the battle for influence in Africa has dominated activities. Donald Trump, the U.S. president, setting the tone.
The United States is the world's largest giver in the world by far of foreign aid, but few give anything to us. That is why we are taking a hard look at U.S. foreign assistance. That will be headed up by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. We will examine what is working, what is not working, and whether the countries who receive our dollars and our protection also have our interests at heart. Moving forward, we are only going to give foreign aid to those who respect us and, frankly, are our friends. And we expect other countries to pay their fair share for the cost of their defense. The United States is committed to making the United Nations more effective and accountable. I have said many times that the United Nations has unlimited potential. As part of our reform effort, I have told our negotiators that the United States will not pay more than 25% of the UN peacekeeping budget. This will encourage other countries to step up, get involved, and also share in this very large burden. And we are working to shift more of our funding from assessed contributions to voluntary, so that we can target American resources to the programs with the best record of success. Only when each of us does our part and contributes our share can we realize the UN's highest aspirations. We must pursue peace without fear, hope without despair, and security without apology. Looking around this hall, where so much history has transpired, we think of the many before us who have come here to address the challenges of their nations and of their times. And our thoughts turn to the same question that ran through all their speeches and resolutions, through every word and every hope. It is the question of what kind of world will we leave for our children, and what kind of nations they will inherit. The dreams that fill this hall today are as diverse as the people who have stood at this podium.
U.S. President Donald Trump there, but that will not shake any African country, at least not Ghana, because President Akufo-Addo took the stage just 24 hours later, and the response was direct and vigorous.
We know we must get our population educated and trained, and we are setting about it. We must address our infrastructural deficit. The traditional methods of tackling this problem will not provide the answer. We're looking for new ways to resolve it. Ghana, like many countries in Africa, is forging relations with China to make arrangements to help address part of our infrastructure deficit. This is not a uniquely Ghanaian or African phenomenon. It has not been lost on us that the developed, rich, and well-established countries have been paying regular visits to China and seeking to open new economic ties and improve upon existing ones. It is also not lost on us that a lot of anxiety is being expressed about the possibility of a recolonization of the African continent by a new power. We should indeed learn from history. It was at the turn of the 20th century that China's first railways were built by Western companies, financed by Western loans to a nearly bankrupt Qing dynasty, And it was under those circumstances that a strategic port called Hong Kong was leased for 99 years. And the rest, as the saying goes, is history. Today, the former victim of Western Railways imperialism is lending billions to countries throughout Africa, Asia, and Europe to construct not only railroads, but also highways, ports, power plants, and other infrastructure, and many businesses. The historical echoes are certainly worrisome, but yes, surely, we must and can learn from history.
That was President Akufo-Addo yesterday at the UN General Assembly. Well, China itself has defended its fight for influence here in Africa. Here is Ambassador Shi Ting-Wang speaking in Accra yesterday.
50 years ago, at that time then, China, we were very poor, but we built up close to 1,000 kilometers railway from Tanzania to Zambia. But at that time, we don't ask for any returns. What we want is that for the development of Africa, for the liberation of Africa. But now, we have a more ability to do more for African people. We would like to do more for African people, but the other people are not very happy what we are doing in African countries. China, we don't want to listen to the other people. And at the same time, we don't want to force the other people to listen to us. Our principles that is equal to African people, equalization, based on the equal status, and also when we have a cooperation with African countries, we don't interfere with your internal affairs. We don't interfere with the domestic issues. We don't force our wills on you. And we would like to we based on those principles. And then I think that we can have good cooperation and collaboration between each other. And it's a win-win situation.
That is the Chinese ambassador to Ghana, Shi Ting-Wang there. I'll be having a conversation with persons across, from across the continent. So we talk about this influence that China is seeking in Africa. We'll also be talking about how this continent should position itself in the midst of especially the trade war between the United States of America and China. I'll soon tell you give you a little bit of demographics about Africa so that you understand the extent of interest that these superpowers have. But let me connect with Sierra Leone. Eric Howard joins me from Sierra Leone. Eric, do I have you? Hello, Eric.
Yeah, hello, Gifty. I'm on the line.
We're also connecting with someone from Nigeria. Sir, tell us your name. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, my name's Mel.
We have Egbe from Nigeria. Egbe, do I have you?
Yes, you do.
Yes, I hear you. So that's Egbe Nyota from Nigeria. He's editor for our partner Channels TV. And Carol Khan and Kin, who is joining us on Skype from Benin. Well, let's start this conversation now. I'm starting from you in Nigeria, Egbe. Egbe, how has the Nigerian experience with America, China, and the conversation been so far? How has it been?
It's been a divided house back here. While the government is determined to move the economy, in their words, to move the economy forward, and looking for all possible means to strengthen the economy and diversify and expand. There's been the conversation about the possibility of selling out to China, about strengthening the relations with the U.S., and the trade issues between the U.S. and China. All of that is getting the citizens in the country worried about why the government seems to be so focused or determined to go ahead with in the investment, if you want to call it investment, from China. So it's sort of like a divided house. No one can really say, except those in government who are determined to say, okay, we want to use this facilities we're getting from China to rebuild our infrastructure, to correct some of the errors that have been made, and all of that. So it sounds like a plan.
Right. That sounds very much like the Ghanaian story. Yesterday, when the president hits the stage at the UN General Assembly, exactly what he said. It's always been about infrastructural development, which is why most of the African countries seem to be turning towards China. Let me find out from Sierra Leone whether that is the case there. Eric, is this the case in Sierra Leone?
Of course, that's exactly the same. You know, China has been contributing greatly towards Sierra Leone in terms of this infrastructural development with construction of bridges, roads, and of course, lots more other things. So that is one of the reasons why Sierra Leone is maintaining its relations with China.
Let's cross to Benin now to find out what the situation is. In Benin, what do you say is the Chinese influence there?
Yeah, the influence is quite remarkable here in Benin because they're driving force in several domains like agriculture, technology, telecommunication, and so many other things. For example, let me tell you about the agriculture domain. More than 60,000 tons of cotton have been imported from Benin to China. So you can see that more than ever, China is determined to show that the country is doing a lot for the development of Benin.
Well, let me come to you, Nigeria, Eric and Egbe in Nigeria, to find out what you think. And this is a question we put on our social media platform, asking people who connect with us there to tell us what or how they think Africa should position itself. Now we see the trade war that's ongoing between America and China. And America indeed has been a traditional development partner for many of these African countries. Now with the paradigm shift that we're beginning to see, how do you think Africa should begin to position itself to make the most on both sides without necessarily meddling in the misunderstanding or disagreements between these two superpowers, so to speak?
Well, what I do think is that Africa needs to begin to look inward into itself. I mean, what Africa's comparative advantage? Both the U.S. and China, yeah, they're investing, they've been development partners. The U.S. has been a development partner for most of the African countries, and is still seeking to do more for the African countries. So to speak, I mean, with the setting up of the agency that's supposed to invest about, is it $60 billion or thereabout, not too sure. But then China is also pouring into Africa a great deal, expanding its investments and facilities to different African countries. Africa needs to begin to look, the African leaders need to look inward. What do African nations have? What are those positives that the African nations have that they can use as a strong point? If Africa continues to come at this nation or continue to collect the investment, if you want to call it investment, from these other investing nations without something to offer, then we will continue to stay down there.
But are you saying that Africa has not had anything to offer? Because it looks like there is an intense focus on the resources, especially the natural resources in some of these African countries. That's something to offer.
Exactly. But you see what's happening here is Africa has the natural resources, but the value chain beyond the natural resources we have. What are we adding anything to the value chain of those natural resources? Let's take crude oil, for instance, from Nigeria. Nigeria has one of the best qualities of crude oil. So it goes out. And then what comes back into Nigeria is refined fuel, refined PMS, refined diesel. And guess what? Beyond the refined diesel and the refined PMS, there are other byproducts that are coming out from refining this crude. All of that is sort of like thrown away. You get where I'm coming from? So Africa has natural resources, but it's not enough to always send out the natural resources and get back finished.
So if I get you right, Egbe, you're basically saying that Africa should, in the negotiations that it has with China, begin to look more at refining or processing the natural resources in the negotiations of whatever it is they want to deal with China in.
That's part of what I'm trying to say. But then the other thing is also while you're also bringing them in to build the infrastructure, are they doing technology transfer? Because the way many of these Chinese companies work is that they come in, they do whatever they need to do. They never allow the Africans, and this is, I confirm this from some other people who've spoken to, they never allow the Africans to see the back end.
Okay.
The working behind the scenes. They never allow the Africans to see that.
To see the back
end. So
end.
the technology transfer is somewhat like delayed.
Okay.
Or not even there at all.
Well, let me go to Benin and find out from you. Carol, you were talking about the areas that they've been interested in. Here in Ghana, we've had some sort of conversation. We've been having some sort of conversation about some bauxite exchange, not necessarily giving them bauxite, but refining the bauxite here and having some sort of exchange with China. You speak about the fact that they're into agriculture, for example, in Benin. Do you think that the negotiations that have gone on so far, it's one that gives Benin an upper hand, one that gives Benin actual value for money so far?
You know, the problem here is not whether Benin is given value or not. The problem here is whether Benin is benefiting from what China is doing in terms of investment here in Benin. Because when you take, for example, let me go back to other domains like telecommunication or maybe even some companies. Let me just tell you that just because of China investment, the sugar coming from Benin is now on the market. That was not the case when China was not investing here in Benin. So whatever may be what people are saying, what we have to take into account is the fact that with the investment of China, Benin is doing good. But what is important here is that maybe Benin has to strategize a new way of dealing with its partner. I'm talking about contract. For example, when you take the case of Angola, you know, for Benin not to fall in the same tribe as other countries like Angola, I'm talking about the natural resources. Benin has to make sure that when he decides to sign, for example, a memorandum of agreement with China, he has to make sure that what is given back to China, for example, is equivalent to what Benin is receiving from that contract.
Do you get the feeling that that is what is happening, that there is that kind of equality in terms of the exchanges? Do you get the feeling that's happening?
I think somehow, because it's true that we cannot say that. Yeah, when I say somehow, it's true that Benin is not totally getting what normally has to be given in terms of contract. And it's not just in Benin, it's everywhere. What is that? African countries, for example, they are in need of infrastructure, but instead of investing in infrastructure, they are into maybe building a stadium or so forth. So there's a need for African countries to sit down and to work collectively so that instead of their market not to be protected, the market will be protected because they're working collectively.
Because they're working collectively. Let's go to Sierra Leone. Eric, how do you think that Sierra Leone is getting what it fairly deserves from its partnership, from its relations with China?
Well, I think I can give a yes and a no to that answer. You know, looking at the whole relation that has existed between the two nations, you find out that we have got natural resources, just as the other journalists were mentioning. Sierra Leone is also a country which has got lots of natural resources. So yes, the Chinese have been doing some investment in Sierra Leone, but you find out that, in fact, most of the development that they do in Sierra Leone, not just for the Chinese, even other international partners, they do it on loan schemes. So even if they build a bridge, or perhaps we talk about the toll road, which they constructed for us here in Sierra Leone, you know, it has to do with some amount of years, which will have to be, it will be on loan. So even if you calculate, perhaps towards the end of the term that they have said, it might surpass the kind of money which the Chinese actually invested in building that road, that's a toll road. And we also have systems in which there's a mining company. And recently, of course, some number of Chinese were deported from Sierra Leone due to illegal mining, because they were found in some places doing some illegal mining stuff. So though they have actually contributed a lot, they have been doing investment, and of course recently the president was at the FOCAC summit, where actually the Chinese president pledged some amount of dollars in support of Sierra Leone in terms of building a bridge that connects the main capital towards the Lunke International Airport. That is one huge project which many people have been looking forward to for the past years. So I can say in another way around, both parties to enjoy benefit from each other.
Eric, I wanted to chip this question in quickly. Whether or not these industries, you say the partnership is creating jobs, because unemployment is a big deal in our countries here in Africa. Is it creating the necessary jobs?
Well, yes, it's creating job in that aspect, though not as well expected. But we have got lots of Chinese companies here that employ Sierra Leoneans. And we talk about the Bintumani Hotel. There are lots of touristic sites around the mining industries which do employ some Sierra Leoneans. But of course, Sierra Leone has got a high number of unemployment rates. So I think in terms of strengthening the relations between Sierra Leone and China, I think they need to look into employment, into providing more jobs for the young people, so that the relationship will be one that will be both sides
mutually
benefiting from each other as well.
Mutually beneficial. That's what a lot of people are saying. Let me wrap up with this conversation by taking your thoughts on how safe African countries are, especially now that is because, I mean, we're seeing the sort of disagreement that's going on between the U.S. and China. President Donald Trump at the UN General Assembly did not mince words at all. He says he clearly spells out how they're going to support the rest of the world. And I'm saying this because that is a Western country that has supported almost all of our countries here in Africa. But China is coming in very strong. So I want to take your thoughts about how safe is the continent going forward in these dynamics, this political dynamics that we're beginning to see. Any of you can start. Maybe we should start from Nigeria. Egbe? Seems that we've lost Egbe. Let me find out from you, Carol. Carol, you have a response to that? Carol? Okay, let me finish. Let me finish with you, Eric, in Sierra Leone, about what your thoughts are about how safe Africa is, Africa and its natural resources. How safe are we when it comes to dealing with this?
You know, for the past years, the continent has been exploited. So I think there's a huge lot of cooperation between the African continent as well as the people who have been supporting. Of course, the United States have been there for the past decades, and China is only coming in not too long ago. So I think we are not too very safe, but in terms of cooperation, I think the leaders themselves, the African leaders, need to have like unity in terms of finding ways at which they could see that the continent grows up beyond what we are seeing now towards achieving something from these partners, and at the same time the continent is not left in a state of exploitation. So I think that should be one of the ways in which our leaders should collaborate with these partners and donors as well.
Right. Eric, thank you so much for your time. Eric Kawa there, he's with Africa News in Sierra Leone. Do I still have you, Carol? Okay, we've lost Carol, but Carol joined us. Carol Can and Kin joined us all the way from Benin, and also on the line we had Egbe Nyota from Nigeria with our partner Channels TV. So I was just telling you about some of the demographics. I mean, that makes Africa an interesting place for the eyes of China and for the United States of America. Now, if you look at in terms of population, as of 2016, the African continent had 1.2 billion people. That's a huge number, 1.2 billion people. Nominal GDP was 2.19 trillion as of 2017. GDP PPP was 6.63 6.36 trillion in 2017, and our GDP per capita was 1,820 as of 2017. These are a lot of figures, but those who love economics will understand. Some of the resources, of course, that the continent boasts of is diamond, sugar, salt, gold, iron, cobalt, uranium, copper, bauxite, silver. Bauxite, which we're trading off with China at the moment, or which we would be soon. Silver, we've got petroleum, cocoa beans, woods, and tropical fruits as well. Let's get on social media, find out what your thoughts are about how this continent should position itself in the midst of all of these different and ever-changing political dynamics, especially with Donald Trump at the helm of affairs in the United States of America. So I'm going on to Facebook to find out what the thoughts are. So this is the question that we put up there. Let's see what your answers have been, and of course we provide you with the extent of space we're talking about, the geographical space we're talking about. Daniel Rex Nyamiche says it will be good that they take Africa immediately because we've been running to them. What difference does it make to position ourselves? For the loans to aid, I'm selling Ghana. China, how much will you offer? Europe, how much are you willing to pay? Well, I doubt that any of these countries want to buy. They want to take your resources, really. Armed Kilogram says we should position ourselves well so that we can take more aid. Okay, I don't know if that's supposed to be sarcastic, but Rich Afrifa says we are the least developed continent with enormous resources, and some countries prefer us in this stage to help sell off their finished products. We need to develop based on materials we have in abundance in Ghana or Africa. Add value using simple technologies that are available at affordable rates to leapfrog our economy. Example is palm oil. Malaysia, you say, makes 30 billion per year from this. How much does our cocoa, gold, and oil give us? A question you end with there. Victor Ampon, Africa possesses whatever those nations need to build, support, and maintain their power as they all scramble to roll out, maneuver each other's efforts. That's quite a long message you have there, Ampon. Let me move on to Theophilus Tego, who says that if we stand together and stop being greedy, and you have greedy in capital letters, then we can stand boldly on ourselves. You mean that then we can depend on ourselves, I suppose. Agostino Kuaku Ameto says, where is the legend? I don't know which legend you're talking about, sir. Angel Gabriel said, Africa should be, okay, you want to say should be sold to the Europeans. Well, like I said, I'm not sure they're buying, because we have a lot of migrants who are going who are not even getting accepted. What they want is the resources that you say you have. Okay, so those are some of the thoughts on social media platform. Do keep connecting with us. Let's talk about this as we go along.